What say you, Madam Foreperson? Is the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
All right, let's get into the second half of the arena. First up, she travels the world lecturing on the critical issues of human trafficking and domestic violence. She's an expert on body language and the author of Reading People, How to Understand and Predict Their Behavior Anytime, Any Place. We welcome back Wendy Patrick. And he has been recognized as one of the best criminal and civil trial attorneys in Georgia, a rep for being one of the best federal trial lawyers in the country. Welcome back, Page Pate. Thanks both for being here today.
Great to be with you.
Paige, I'm going to start with you. As the attorney, Aaron Hernandez found guilty of first-degree murder. Do you think that's exactly as it should have been?
I do, based upon the evidence that we heard. I mean, obviously, Mr. Hernandez is not new to confrontations like this. There's evidence, and eventually, I think, another trial that may occur, even though he's been given life without the possibility of parole. So, no, I don't think it came as a surprise to anyone who's been paying attention to the trial.
Even the fact they couldn't find the murder weapon?
Right. I mean, ultimately, a piece of evidence like that would be very powerful, but I think the state, in this case, the Commonwealth, really laid out the evidence, let the jury feel like they were a part of the case. They obviously had other physical evidence. They also didn't have much evidence of motive, though, but as you probably know, that's not required for a murder prosecution.
Wendy, oddly enough, it comes down to body language, too, in court, because a lot of people were watching Aaron Hernandez when the verdict came through, and, of course, he mouthed to people, not true. But it was, a lot of people saw him during the trial as being very flip, very cocky, believing that he would get off all the time. Do you think that had any real reaction or any real effect on the jury?
You know, I hate to say that I do, Ed, because that's not something they're allowed to consider. He's not a piece of evidence. We're not going to put an evidence tag on his forehead and say, have a look, what do you think? But people are human beings, and of course we notice body language. And you're absolutely right. He swaggered in and out of the courtroom, and he blew kisses to his fiance, and he seemed really overly confident. And that doesn't play well with jurors when you're a man on trial for first-degree murder. I don't think it helped him. I think it could possibly have hurt him. But they had far more evidence than they needed to find him guilty circumstantially of first-degree murder.
He better lose that cockiness right now for the rest of his life, because that's going to be a little difficult now in jail. But then again, he has earned it, so says the jury. Let's move on to something else, body language and law as well. In Atlanta, 9 educators in a test cheating case are sentenced to prison. Now, I want to say this much here, Wendy. I agree with what the judge did here, because personally the judge said this is horrible what you did. There are thousands of children that you affected here. And he gave everybody a chance to come up and say they're sorry and basically get a very light sentence. 2 people did it, the others did not, and they got hammered. What's your thought and takeaway as far as not only what you saw in the courtroom perhaps, but basically the verdict itself?
Well, I'll tell you, as I teach business ethics in addition to practicing law, and so I have absolutely no compassion for cheaters. But here is what made this a difficult choice, is they also would have had to give up their appeal rights. That's not something anybody is going to do lightly. That's not something any lawyer is going to advise his or her client to do. So it was a package deal. In other words, it wasn't just take a plea deal, but it was also give up a constitutional right that many people don't want to give up. Having said that, I got to point out, it is highly unusual in a nonviolent crime to see these types of prison sentences. They're setting an example for the rest of the nation, and you bet educators around the nation and universities are going to make sure their policies are crystal clear the kind of consequences this kind of thing can have.
Paige, you think the judge was too heavy-handed?
It's hard to go into the details of this case. I actually represented one of the teachers who entered a plea prior to the trial. The DA was offering misdemeanor pleas under the First Offender Act, just a little bit of probation, a fine, and most of the people who were originally charged in this case took that option. And then again, after trial, Judge Baxter offered these folks the opportunity to avoid state prison. All they had to do was admit some responsibility, some guilt in the cheating scandal. And as you noted earlier, only 2 of them did that. So I think he gave them every opportunity to basically set their own sentence. But at the end of the day, this is the first time we've seen anything like this here in Georgia, and I think really around the country, where teachers have been prosecuted under the racketeering statute. So it is stiff.
And I only got about 20 seconds left, Paige, but we need to make that point. These teachers were not charged with cheating. They were charged with racketeering, which is a much more serious offense.
That's exactly right. Under Georgia law, it's a mandatory minimum, 5 years in prison, up to 20 years in prison. There were also some other charges like theft and false statements, but clearly racketeering was the big one.
All right, Wendy Patrick and Page Pate, if you will, please stand by for just a couple of moments. We're going to take a break, come back, and when we do, we have a little more legalese to talk about as well. Because in the South Carolina murder, the white police officer and the black unarmed individual, there has been a decision made on whether or not he could face the death penalty. Plus, Hillary Clinton is looking for people to see her as young, energetic, and a champion. She will not be happy with what she is being Googled as these days. We'll touch on that when we come back right here on MidPoint.
I, Cheryl Rios, does not believe a woman should be president. We're built differently. We do have different hormones, and we do, and in the world that we live in, I understand that there's equal rights, and that's a wonderful thing, and I support all of that. I don't support a woman being president.
Back to work in the arena, expert on body language, author of Reading People, How to Understand and Predict Their Behavior Anytime, Anyplace, Wendy Patrick, and veteran trial attorney, member of the bar of the U.S. Supreme Court, Page Pate. Paige, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think? Here's the CEO of a Texas company, Go Ape Marketing. Her name is Cheryl Rios, and she says that women should not be president, and she has backed up with a tweet that she put out here today because apparently she's just been excoriated on this. She says, I didn't say that women should be abused or that they're stupid or can't be lawyers, doctors, or run successful businesses. I know and support that they can, as I have done it. I mentioned one position only, the head of our government, the head of state, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. Paige, I can only imagine that she is going to have to do a lot of backing up on this, but let's be honest. There are people who feel exactly as she does.
I don't doubt that. I'm sure there are a number of people who feel that way. I mean, it's hard for me to speak, whether a woman is qualified to be president, but I'll tell you this. I mean, in my line of work, I appear in front of a lot of women who are judges and who are very firm and very decisive, yet at the same time very fair and certainly in control of the courtroom. So I think if somebody can handle a difficult job where you literally have someone's life and liberty in your hands, that they could probably handle being CEO of the country.
Wendy, are you insulted by this? Because she says, look, I am old-fashioned, I am Christian, and I believe what I have said.
I wouldn't say insulted. I disagree. Many of us disagree. But, and Paige makes a great point. We put into the hands of our female judges literally life and death decisions many times. In fact, we just saw that with Jodi Arias. That was a female judge. So it happens every day. Not insulted. She's entitled to her view. Many people, and I feel bad that this happens, many people are very nasty on social media, and she really got hammered for expressing her viewpoint, which of course she's entitled to. But more than anything, I think there's really a silver lining that it re-energized this discussion of the fact that women are qualified to do anything they choose to do. So it's never a bad thing that we're talking about this issue. It just needs to be, hopefully raised in a fashion where people can have a civil discussion instead of really go for the throat, as I think they did with her.
I guess what caught people here is in a quote from her, with the hormones we have, there is no way we should be able to start a war. That in itself will have people talking for a long time, Wendy.
You bet. That in and of itself, I think, probably incensed people the most, rather than simply stating a viewpoint. She actually provided some supporting documentation that nobody agrees with.
I would certainly understand that the women in my life have never been angry at me for any reason whatsoever, and have always looked for peace and love and peace settling. There you go. That'll get me off the hook real quick. Minute that we have to go here right now. Wendy, to you first. Ben Carson is planning a Detroit announcement on May the 4th. He likely will announce that he's going to run for president of the United States. Some polls say it's too soon to count him out. What do you think?
He's got a delightful persona. He's got great ideas, and he represents a departure from really the politics that's plagued our nation for so long. Regardless of what side you're on, it's nice to see a fresh face, and what an accomplished gentleman. So I think it's going to be a good thing, and I'm glad he's tossing his hat into the ring. And
not once did you say in there that you thought he could be elected president. Just pointing it out. It's okay, but that's fair. Paige, to you now, because, and again, what Wendy has said is right. I've met him, interviewed him. Brilliant man indeed. But what about running the country?
Well, I think there's always room, even if this Republican field gets as crowded as we anticipate that it will, for a true outsider. And I think, if anything, Ben Carson is a true outsider. He's articulate, he's smart, he's got some good ideas. So it just depends on the mood of the country, and I know we're a long way off from the election, but by that time we could be ready for something completely different, and he would be that.
We're all going to go through a little bit of fatigue in the next few months, aren't we, Paige?
Absolutely. I'm already there.
Already there and wondering, okay, it really hasn't even started yet, and we're still focusing on Hillary Clinton getting a burrito at a place somewhere heading for Iowa. There you go. Welcome to America. Page Pate, Wendy Patrick, I thank you both for being here today. I will look forward to talking to you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Third and final Wednesday hour here on MidPoint. Hillary Clinton will have a difficult time explaining the latest revelation about her use of emails with proof she was ignoring any and all warnings about personal use. It is a difficult anniversary in Boston. And maybe the time has come to bury the Rolling Stone once and for all. We'll see what we get to when we come up. Third hour of MidPoint next.